What's good, everybody? I'm Jędrek, he's Sodek, and we are here today to help you find yourself in this brand new Modern. Let's go. Alrighty, so as many of you, probably all of you, already know, Lurrus has been banned in Modern yesterday. And honestly, this is the only shake-up really post MH2, but it's a big one. We've been subjected to companions for almost 2 years now, a little less than 2 years because Ikoria was spring 2020, and half of that time was mostly Uro. So you didn't get that many Lurrus decks when Uro was around, unless aside from this brief period of time when Lurrus was unnerved and companions were unnerved in general, and then you were only playing companions. Some people were playing Yorion with Uro, but for the most part, when Uro was in the format, companions were in the biggest problems. You were much more concerned about Uro and Field of the Dead, and for
Mystic Sanctuary, yeah.
for a very brief period of time with the Valky Cascade nonsense. But yeah, after Uro got banned, after MH2 got released, we got a bunch of powerful low curve cards from MH2, coupled with Expressive Iteration from Strixhaven. And Lurrus has been steadily climbing up the ladder and went from a very good card, probably still one of the best cards in the format even before, to decisively best card in the format. And recent weeks shown that Death Shadow was the best deck in the format, really. There was a PTQ last week where the top 4 were all Death Shadow decks. And yeah, Death Shadow was very strong. Arguably the second strongest deck was Hammer, also a Lurrus deck. And then we've had 4-color, which was, a Yorion deck. Basically, my biggest regret about Lurrus getting banned is the fact that only Lurrus got banned and not Yorion as well. I don't think Yorion will dominate that much, but I would just like them to just axe companions once and for all from competitive Magic. It would be simple, more elegant, and sure, some people would lose their beloved pet Lutri decks or Giganta in Jeskai Ascendancy or whatever, but for the most part, I think that would be a better decision than just cutting Lurrus. Yeah. It's a minor one, I think.
I'm a bit, because they didn't ban companion. I'm a bit worried that maybe they toy with other companions. Could be printed in future. I hope not. After
the first
2 weeks with companions, I was kind of hyped because it was a new way to play Magic, but it was so repetitive over the time that I'm not that high.
I don't think they will ever subject Standard and Pioneer to another companion. I think there's a chance that they will put a singleton companion in Modern Horizons 3, maybe. Maybe in the Lord of the Rings set, some Gamgee's horse will be a companion, or Gollum will be companion, or I don't know, some other.
Gollum companion actually sounds awesome. Okay, and according to the data shown with the ban and restricted announcement, Lurrus decks were 31% of the metagame. According to the 4.0 bracket index, kind of interesting way to collect the data. Too
31 and was honestly, I saw that number and it was lower than I thought.
Yeah, I was also thinking that.
Yeah, I thought it was half of the format. Honestly.
Yeah, that's true.
Between the actual great Lurrus decks, so Hammer and Giant or Hammer and Shadow. Sorry, I'm a big hater of Giant Saga, and I'm even a bigger hater now, which we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, between those two great decks, I thought they've had like 40% of the metagame by themselves, and then you had like 10% of Jund Saga, Lurrus control decks, Burn, Mill, Scales. And by the way, the Lurrus ban is obviously because there were 2 Scales decks in the finals, and what's he said? No more. You can't play Scales with Lurrus. It's too good.
Okay, but like Lurrus is banned. End of story for the Cat Nightmare.
Okay,
but
so
the format
we'll see you next. We'll see you next week. End of story. Nothing more to add.
See you. And like we are still left with many other tools that are waiting to be used. And the question is how the format will shake up and how it will like what will be the most played things, and everyone are thinking about it. And we prepared a few takes on this subject, so maybe you'll have a better understanding on what's going on.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I guess we'll start with once again the best deck in the format as of yesterday before 5 p.m. European, which is Grixis Shadow.
Maybe you should say that like at very first we'll talk about how the top Lurrus decks will evolve.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So Shadow. I think the first thought that jumped into anybody's mind when they were thinking about post Lurrus Shadow was Street Wraith and Delve creatures, which was the important part of Shadow decks of the past. And now we have Merctide Regent, which
instead
is
of Gurmag Angler,
a much stronger creature than Gurmag Angler. Even though Angler costs 1 mana, which I think is kinda important. Like in general, Merctide is much larger creature with flying, and it can be killed by Unholy Heat, usually, which is also a really important part of the card and something you definitely are pleased to see in your deck. So yeah, I think that Shadow people will turn to their old ways of Street Wraithing and Delving. Maybe they will play Battle Rage again. We've discussed it with Sodek briefly before recording. There's a lot of removal spells in the format right now, so I don't know how good Battle Rage is, but I think it's at least a desirable sideboard card if you have more than just 4 hard-hitting creatures. Also, maybe you will just play it Dress Down because it's more or less Battle Rage with Shadow, but like Dress Down was more or less Battle Rage with Shadow, but it was your only big creature, so now maybe you want some actual Battle Rages if you have more creatures that will benefit from Battle Rage, but not so much from Dress Down.
Dress Down. Also, like Dress Down was kind of a number with Murktide. Like
that's true.
You couldn't, cast Dress Down end of turn and then cast Regent.
I think that the days of main deck Dress Down in Shadow are gone, and you will play it as a sideboard card.
Yeah, maybe.
Similarly, maybe Stubborn Denial also. Last card, okay, I think You wanted to talk about it?
No, I wanted to just point it out, but you did it, so.
Yep. Not Merctide. Stubborn Denial. Once again, a card that was once a mainstay of the Shadow deck because you've had like 7 or 8 creatures that can turn it on quite reliably, and now you were down to 4 when Lurrus was legal because you were just playing Shadows, and now maybe you are back on track when it comes to Denial. Maybe in the sideboard, maybe main deck, who knows. But definitely a card that's quite interesting. It's important to note that since Denial was at the top of the format last time, we've also got some interesting additions. For example, Dispute, which is more or less like Denial in many matchups. Like against blue decks, Dispute is better than Denial because it counters creatures. More or less.
And it does not needs to be paired with other creatures, with other cards.
So if Merctide Regent becomes an important part of the format, then Denial, Dispute becomes much more important card in the mirror. Like if the Shadow decks end up being a Merctide Dirigent Expressive Iteration decks, so basically like think of something like blue-red Merctide that plays Thoughtseize and Shadows, more or less.
Instead of counter spells, something like this.
Instead of like Archmage Charm, probably.
Maybe. Like I'm a bit worried about the mana when you want to go Murktide plus counterspell. Maybe blue-black will be the thing. Like there was a blue-black shadow.
Yeah, but you can just play.
The-
You can just play. You know, like a couple of Steam Vents, and you can still play Iteration. You don't need to play Basic Mountain.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe you don't
So
even need to play Basic Swamp, honestly.
Yeah, and
Who
another
knows?
question, like old Grixis Shadow lists were playing, 4 shadows for Gurmak Anglers and that's it. And now we got, like thanks to Modern Horizons 2, there is also Ragavan and Dragon String Channeler. And I think it will be quite safe to say that these 2 creatures will be included. Like I'm pretty sure about Ragavan because it's just too good to pass up. But I'm not that sure about DSC. It should be around, but maybe it's not as important as it was.
I think it still will be played. It
Of
kind
course,
of,
but it won't be that good, yeah.
yeah. It lost a bit with Lurrus ban because now you can play more expensive cards, but also you will play more Delve cards. I think in decks that previously did not play Delve cards like Death Shadow, and Channeler is really important with Delve cards because you can more easily afford to play 4 copies of Merctide Regent if you have Darcy to filter out your cards and help you both dig towards important stuff and fewer Delirium and Delve. So I think playing like 16 creatures Shadow, like 4 Merctides and 12 1-drops is something that definitely can be happening or could be happening. But once again, we'll see.
Okay, like short theory crafting. What are the advantages of Grixis Shadow over Murktide? Because Murktide is a proven shell, and we all know that Murktide will be at the top of the format. Why Grixis Shadow players should try playing Grixis Shadow still instead of just going to Murktide?
Death Shadow and Thoughtseize are still good cards, basically.
That's it.
I don't think you need more.
We'll see.
I think if Merctide becomes a more popular card in general, because I think it will be. I think more people will try like control decks with Merctide or Shadow with Merctide. And you need hard removal spells for Merctide, I think. And Black gives you that. Like you can play Terminate.
Okay, that's a huge part actually. Because like yesterday we were theory crafting in LGS about like how you want to prepare for the Merctide mirrors, and one of the solution was to add black to have better removal.
Yeah, I think Grixis Merctide was something that was kind of interested in trying earlier on, but it seemed like worse deck than Grixis Shadow because you can't play Lurrus, and now you can just do it because you can't play Lurrus anymore. Oh, okay. One more thing that I'm kind of mad is that they banned Lurrus in general, not just as companion, which would be a better fix if they just banned companion mechanic, because main deck Lurrus is a cool thing to play, and now you can't. And
yeah, that's true. Okay.
Okay, moving on to Hammer.
Forward. Yeah. The second deck that was playing Lurrus was Hammer.
Unless your name was Crusherbot Złagra, also known as Crusherbot Bulgaria.
Or BG. So like the dreams come true for Crusherbot. They don't have to play with Lurrus anymore, so they can play cards that cost more than 2 mana in the main deck. And one is the really big one, Nettlecyst.
The Nettlecyst is by far the most important one, I think.
Yeah, and like I feel that it can be like the only important one because other 3 mana things are like sort of Fire and Ice, maybe something like this. But
I think Kaldra is a reasonable sideboard card for Hammer because
Okay.
If you are playing
Battlefield.
like more attrition matchups, like you don't need to kill Stoneforge Mystic now when it resolves. You want to counter it, of course, or discard because then they won't fetch for a hammer. But once it's on the battlefield, you don't really need to kill it. You just need to deal with whatever was fetched by it. But now you have to deal with Stoneforge Mystic if they have Caldra, which
That's
puts
true.
more strain on an opposing removal spells. So I don't think that Caldra meshes really well with the main deck plan of the deck. And I think it's quite awkward because it's also not great with Sigarda's aid. Or it's pretty good with Pure Steel though, because you can just
Yeah, that's true.
re-equip it, which is cool. But once again, I
But
do think that it's
you
more
need
of
to
a
cheat it, yeah.
yeah. I think it's more of a sideboard card than a main deck card in the deck.
Yeah, can be interesting. But Nettlecyst is the like obvious addition, and like the first Nettlecyst will always be in hammer decks. Like by itself, it's a huge guy and makes like all Ornithopter or Memnite, real threat. Nettlecyst was also a reason why Affinity had any chance at all to compete in the metagame. So I'm curious how big Nettlecyst for Hammer will be. If do you think that Hammer will still be at the top of the format? Personally, I think yes.
I think
Because
Hammer benefited from Lurrus ban more than it
then
lost.
lost.
I think. We're gonna get to that in a second. Or I guess we can talk about it now because we are talking already about Hammer. I think
Lurrus loops.
the Lurrus situation with Hammer was similar to Ragavan's situation in Legacy. When Ragavan got banned, Delver win rate increased across the format because the best matchup for Ragavan was Mirror. You needed Ragavan in Mirror matches. And it wasn't that great outside of Mirror matches. And I think it's a similar situation with Lurrus. The most important part of Lurrus in Hammer deck was to have Lurrus in the Mirror so we can loop Seal of Cleansing and Catar Commando. That was the most important part of Hammer Mirrors from what I was told. Unless you obviously kill your opponent on turn 2 with Flying Seba or some other powerful strategy like that. But outside of Hammer matchups or Hammer Mirrors, of course, you were still using Lurrus from time to time. Don't get me wrong, but it was much more dangerous on the other side of the table than at your side, because the main way that red-black based decks with Lurrus were winning against Hammer was, okay, so now I have Lurrus, I have explosives, you don't have removal in your deck, and I will just loop those explosives every turn or dress down, and your Saga tokens will never survive. If I have explosives, your equipments will never survive, and the game is just done because you don't have interaction in your deck. At best, you have Piffing Needle for explosives, but I still have like Collegan's Command or Dress Down if you name explosives, or just Bubble to keep going and going and going and going and just draw more removal spells. Maybe you have one-shot Graveyard Hate, but it's still usually not enough. So I think that for the most part, lack of Lurrus is a net gain for Hammer.
Okay, reasonable. Okay, moving forward. Another deck that had Lurrus and will have to adapt is TSP and Rec control style decks, and I will let you, TSP and Rec, talk about this. How Grixis, Blue Black Control, Esper, and etc. Lurrus control decks can survive the ban.
Okay, so Grixis definitely lost a bunch. I think that Grixis was the most popular and the deck that I played the most by far with Lurrus in the last half a year. And Lurrus was a centerpiece of this deck. You've had Collegan's Command to rebuy it, you had creatures to get back with Lurrus, you had Mishra's Bubble, which was really important also because of Delirium. And Lurrus was very, very important in that deck, and you will definitely be worse. Blue-Black, on the other hand, which is a deck that I've played in the last week, more or less, was a deck that I was very impressed with, and it was a deck that did not really use Lurrus that much. You had Lurrus. I was debating cutting Lurrus and adding like Jace and Shark Typhoon and a card like that. But Lurrus was less of a centerpiece of the strategy in that deck and more of a I want Lurrus post sideboard because it allows me to loop, insert the important permanent here against the deck that this permanent is good against. So mostly it was EE against Hammer, but it was like Dress Down against Amulet, Niall Spellbomb against Graveyard decks. You can bring back your Snapcaster Mages, stuff like that. But yeah, I think Lurrus was way less important in the blue-black deck. And for this deck, I think that lack of Lurrus in the format might be the net gain as well, because other decks with Lurrus were using Lurrus better and more often than the blue-black deck. Yeah. I will definitely talk about that deck more when we get to other cards that are winners and or losers of the Lurrus ban. But yeah, for now, I think you can just play Grixis without Lurrus. You still have a bunch of good cards. You can play Planeswalkers now, and getting Planeswalker a turn earlier because you have Treasure of Ragavan is really good. So
True.
I think that's something that will be explored not only in like Grixis control, but I think that Grixis midrange might be pretty good. We've talked briefly with Sodek about it yesterday. Like you are playing a red-black deck, based red-black, like Seasoned Pyromancer, discard, Ragavan, all that jazz, and use Splash for iteration mostly. You can play Blood Moon with this deck because with treasures from Ragavan, you can play Blood Moon in your 3-color deck and it's fine. It's more of a like 2.5 color. It was similar to the red-white decks that splash for Teferi and play Blood Moon, like the shitty Stoneblade decks. But instead of playing shitty Stoneblade cards, you play actual good cards in your deck now. And yeah, I think that this type of deck, red-black iteration, might be a pretty great deck.
Moving forward, Jant Lurrus was considered as a reasonable good deck. Now Jant without Lurrus, like Jant Saga without Lurrus, in our opinion, is a stinker.
Why? I think that Jant Saga has always been a terribly constructed deck. True. It was a deck in which Urza Saga was a terrible land and mediocre spell, and it got bailed out quite often by just an insane power level of its cards that sometimes lined up well, and sometimes they didn't, and you were losing. Instead of playing a deck like
at least the combination of Wrenn, at least the combination of Wrenn plus Urza Saga was something, yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't like, I don't think I've ever lost against Saga because of that. If the game was at that stage that they can recur Wrenn with Saga with Wrenn, the game was already won for them usually. So sure, sometimes it will be important, but I do think that if you want to play Jant, just for God's sake, play better mana and don't play Saga. And especially now you can play like Boseiju and Sokenzan and Takenuma and all that stuff. Takenuma gets Planeswalkers. That's something that people kind of forget about probably because they weren't playing Planeswalkers that much in Modern recently because it was Lurrus. And my friend recently, yesterday, when I was playing post Lurrus on Modo and I was playing blue-black and I had Takenuma, and my friend asked me, why do I have Takenuma in your deck if you don't have Lurrus? And I was like, dude, I have Jaces in my deck. Have you read that card? You can bring back Jace with it, or Liliana, or whatever. So yeah, I think Jant Saga is a big stinker. I think that you still don't want to play Jant, and the red-black iteration deck that I've mentioned just a second ago would be my first choice if you want to play like this type of strategy. To be fair, Tarmogoyf might be good because people will try to play like Murktide, and Tarmogoyf is a large creature that doesn't die to heat.
From time to time.
Sometimes, I guess. So just please don't play for Liliana for Bloodbraid in your deck. Just don't do this, okay?
OMG, please.
Unless you want to give us free wins. But yeah, please don't do that.
Okay, and the last part is other decks that were using Lurrus, but were not Lurrus decks by themselves. For instance, Burn, Mill, Scales, and other things.
I don't think that much changed for those decks. I think the most important deck on this list in terms of changing is Scales, because in Scales you had to accommodate a larger white splash for Lurrus.
True.
Maybe you still want to play Sentinel, sure, but maybe you want to go to red-green, because the red ability on Zabaz is better than the white ability on Zabaz, which was the main point of focus, I think, in the splashing zone.
That's true.
You can play Bombardment. We've seen some Scales decks with Bombardment.
That's true.
So I think it will change. Like, I think Burn players will just put Exquisite Firecraft in their sideboard instead of Lurrus.
Finally, let's
And
go.
that's it.
About Mill, I'm a bit worried about the future of Mill going forward, because Mill was extremely soft to Murktide Regent, and Murktide Regent looks like the biggest winner of the format. So I'm not. Also, the average converted mana cost should go up, so Tasha's Hideous Laughter should be a bit worse. It will be still good, for example, versus Hammer, but it won't be as powerful as it was.
But you know what you can do now? You can play Murktide in Mill.
What? Didn't think about that. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe not.
Probably not. You are worse. Your Murktide will be much worse than your opponent's Murktide, most likely.
True. Okay, let's go and talk about the winners of the Lurrus ban. Like, you could already try to guess based on what we already told you about like how the Lurrus deck can evolve, but let's like make it really clear and easy for you. Okay, the biggest.
I will demonstrate it, and you can guess what it is.
Okay. Stormwing Entity.
No, it's Murktide Regent, you dumbass, and the first thing on the list.
That was
What, that was I was doing the face.
That was actually Stormwing Entity. It was like a big bird.
I was a dragonfly. What?
Bird also fly. Lol.
Sure, but then I was doing the scary face. Come on, Sodek.
Nie wiem, jakiś dziób, kościół. It was a dziób.
That's the scary face. Yeah. Because
Okay.
he's like the like, not hair, but like spikes. Okay.
Okay.
Please disregard Sodek and his obvious lack of knowledge
Click
of MTG cards anatomy.
click like if you also think that TSP Endrek was a Storming Entity, not Murktide Regent.
Comment if you think that Sodek was in the wrong, and be mindful that one comment equals 20 likes, because it's much easier to like than comment.
Okay. And challenge accepted. Okay, Murktide Regent, the dominator of the future modern.
Yeah, we've seen it in Legacy. Like, Murktide Regent is a pretty strong card in Legacy. You have many different decks that want to play Murktide. I don't think that people will play Murktide in control decks. Like, it's not like all of a sudden you would play Murktide in blue-white, even though you could do that before. But this type of like blue-black Murktide decks, maybe. We've seen some blue-black Shadow before that looked quite good, I think. Maybe this is a good deck now.
What do you think about blue-black control or Grixis control? Like what you were playing with Lurrus, but not with Lurrus, but with Murktide?
I'm more interested in playing Jace than Murktide in those decks. But Murktide is fine. Maybe you can play like Murktide or two in those decks without much problem, I think.
Yeah. So
but like my biggest worry is that people will try to beat Murktides in coming weeks. So
yeah.
I don't think I don't think you want to play accidental Murktides in your control decks right now. I think it's better to do that in like a month or so. Right now, if you want to play Murktide, I would play dedicated Murktide deck, like Murktide or Shadow, rather than just slot one or two copies that you will expect to pay like 3 mana for usually, and they will be like, I don't know, 6/6s or 5/5s quite often.
5/5,
I wouldn't bother with that. I wouldn't bother with that, honestly.
Okay. So if you want to play Murktide, like okay, you have two options: play a good Murktide deck or be prepared for Murktide decks. So if you think about the removal package, make sure that you have at least like 2 or 3 copies in the main deck of something that will kill Murktide. Like submitting a deck that wants to play a longer game and can't kill Murktide is asking for troubles.
Yep.
So
I would.
try to raise it or kill it.
Yep. I think sweepers go up in value as well right now.
Okay, interesting.
Because you don't have Lurrus, so there is no rebuy mechanic in those decks or that much of a rebuy mechanic in those decks. And people will play more Murktides and more, I think more like creatures like stuff like Seasonal Pyromancer, as we mentioned already, will probably be more popular. So you want to have board wipes in your like control and slower mid-range decks. I think that cards like them might be quite good now. Like if you are playing a white black deck, that I think them is a pretty great card. I've been toying with Esper, like yesterday at night and today in the morning. I haven't played any games with it, but I sketched out the deck that I will most likely play tomorrow in paper. And I wanted to play them, but my mana base was really skewed towards black, and it didn't have. I don't think it had a reasonable shot at casting double white card on turn 4, so I decided to play Damnation instead of them. But I think them is a pretty underestimated card because it's just a great split card of Terminate and Wrath of God. It's something like you basically can't flood on sweepers if you play them as your sweeper. You can play 4 Dems in your deck, I think, and you still want, like against a creature deck, like you play 2 Dems main deck, 2 sideboards, something like that, whatever. And it's not like, oh, I drew all sweepers against elves or something else, and now I only have sweepers and I can't do anything on turn 2. But now all my sweepers can be also terminates, which is cool. So yeah.
True.
Play board wipes.
Okay, moving forward. Another winner of the modern format outside Murktide Regent, in our opinion, are decks that were pushed out from the format because of Grixis Death Shadow. And there are for sure 2 decks that were
and one that's
of it.
the most important, I think, which is Rhinos.
Yeah, Rhinos. Rhinos was a deck that was very popular at the very beginning of like creating the format post-modern.
Not even at the very beginning only. It was basically very popular until Death Shadow started being more popular in like November.
True.
So yeah, if Death Shadow is not that popular, then the Rhinos are getting a big dub, and especially with Otawara and Poseidru. So you got a very powerful printing in new set, which isn't that easy for a Cascade deck to get, honestly, in a standard legal set. And your biggest predator might be at least hurt a bit, and maybe like Death Shadow will be for sure less popular than it was yesterday, like in the next few weeks. Partially because it will probably be a weaker deck, partially because people will try something new, and Rhinos are a very good deck at punishing nonsense. Because if you go Fire Ice into Cascade into Force of Negation, you are winning against nonsense. Just
winning against basically like
you are winning against most stuff with this kind of draw. But
with this opening,
Rhinos are like, a lot of people are like, okay, so Cascade combo decks, yada yada. But we've been saying that for months. Rhinos is not a combo deck; it's a mid-range deck, and
very good mid-range deck.
Yeah, mid-range, even a tempo-ish deck, I would say. Mid-range like tempo. So yep, very good at punishing nonsense. I think it's, if you like Rhinos as a deck, play Rhinos now. I think.
Yeah.
But figure out a way to beat Murktide Regent.
I think like Rhinos can play 1 or 2 Murktides. Like
yes, you can play Murktides in the Rhinos if you want.
Murktides is a really good answer to opponents' Murktide.
But your Murktides will be smaller because you don't have cantrips. So,
That's true. That's why you're not playing 4. but you're playing 1 or 2. Also, you still have break and borrowers just to bounce them. Like if you match this with other tempo plays, like
I thought about I thought about playing some cards with channel that kills Merktide, and Dotawara bounces Merktide, but
Yeah.
there is a Bamboo Tribe Shooter or something like this, Bamboo Tribe Archer, but it suddenly costs 2 mana on the front side, so you can't play it in the Cascade deck. It has channel for 5 mana to kill a flyer. 3/3 Defender Reach, a staple of Kamigawa Limited.
Interesting. There's also a Mooncell prototype, but still not in Rhinos. But
so
the card can be really good right now with Murktide around. Okay, and the second deck is Amulet. Amulet was crushed by Grixis Shadow. Like I saw many tweets of Titan players who were saying that they are winning against or have a chance of winning against everything but Grixis, and Grixis now won't be that played. So I think playing Amulet sounds.
well, I think
cool.
if people gravitate towards Merktide Regent, it's still bad for Amulet.
It's still it's not the best thing ever, but it's still better than playing against Grixis Shadow.
Well, the question is whether it's better to play against Grixis Shadow or Merktide players with Magus of the Moon instead of Blood Moon, because they caught up on the fact that, well, Boseiju kills Blood Moon, but it doesn't kill Magus of the Moon. So how good is Merktide with 2 sideboarded Maguses against Amulet? I think pretty good.
Yeah, this can be really good. I'm thinking, okay, imagine a scenario when so many people are playing Magus of the Moon that Amulet players are starting playing Fury. Just to hardcast it.
Not Fury. Shock. Like in Standard.
No. Fury.
Like in
It
Standard.
has to be.
Blue-Black Fairies had 4 shocks in the sideboard to kill Magus of the Moon, with no red lands in the deck. It was just to kill Magus. You are playing literal shock to kill Magus in a blue-black deck.
Cool.
It was insane.
I was also thinking there was a.
Or maybe it was extended, I don't remember.
Players were playing mana leaks because everyone had spreading seas, something like this. It was like super strange tactics, that works only when opponents have their cards. Okay, maybe that won't be that good in format. Okay, another 1.5 deck that I want to point out. The first one is Belcher. Belcher had a bad matchup versus Grixis Shadow and still doesn't have a really good matchup versus Merktide, so it doesn't look very, very well here. But Belcher, like Rhinos, is very good at punishing nonsense. And I feel that in coming 2-3 weeks, it will be so free to play Belcher online.
But also, my concern about Belcher is that even if you have better matchup against Merktide than Shadow, I think you have worse matchup against Shadow without Lurrus than against Shadow with Lurrus, because new versions of Shadow will most likely kill faster, but they will grind a bit worse. So Belcher doesn't really care how good your opponent is grinding. That's why Belcher is good. Like, it's good against Yorion and stuff like that. Well, now they have Boseiju, but whatever. Belcher is good against people durdling with card advantage and just moving cards between zones. And new Shadow deck will most likely be more focused on killing their opponent than replaying Bubble with Lurrus, because you can't do that anymore. So I think that if Shadow stays as a part of the metagame, it's actually worth for Belcher.
Yeah, but we need to assume that it will stay, and we still don't know if that will be the case.
Yes, and also what you said, a lot of people will experiment, and killing them on turn 3 is a good way to make sure that those experiments are short-lived, or at least some of them.
And the last deck that I added to the winners list, but Jędrek quickly told me that I'm crazy.
Okay, my exact quote for our Polish language fan base was "Chuja tam nie tron," which means
Tron won't be that good.
It means you are stupid as fuck, and Tron won't ever come back, more or less.
Yeah, and that's true. Like I was thinking that maybe without Grixis Shadow around, maybe Tron can be better, etc., etc. But in reality,
Well,
Tron.
Tron for sure is a deck that's worse against Merktide than Shadow. 100%.
Okay.
Because Relic is better against Shadow than it's against Merktide. Merktide plays Blood Moon or Magus of the Moon. Merktide has faster clock than Shadow had, for the most part, I think. Merktide had more counter spells and less discard. Like, definitely Tron is losing on the fact that Merktide is becoming more popular as a creature and maybe as a deck as well. So, yep.
Let's not talk about
Tron is bad and will be even worse than it was before.
Okay.
Especially also because of the like metagame implications that we will talk about in the loser section. We've had deck weeks to combo in loser section, and Tron is pretty weak to combo decks. So, you know. Okay, next up we have Prowess.
But not the prowess you know with Lurrus, but and also
The Prowess you used to know with Bedlam Reveler.
Also, but you can also instead of Bedlam Reveler play Obosh.
Yeah, that was actually my suggestion, and Sodek was talking about Bedlam Reveler like a dum-dum.
I want to believe that Bedlam will return because like the card was kind of cool. Also, it was very funny. Like opponents were not doing anything for the whole game, and you were like you killed them and asking, "What did you have in hand?" Because you didn't play anything, and they are showing you like 3 Bedlams.
That's a classic. That's an absolute
so
classic.
cool.
Opponent with playing Prowess with 2 Bedlam in hands or 3 Bedlam, and they should be able to kill you, but you've played like a stray Kaya's Guile under graveyard, or you've had like I don't know, you're playing Erza's Saga and you have main deck Soul Guide and you exile their graveyard or something like that, and suddenly they have 2 8-drops in hand that they can't cast. I think that there is a good 8 and a bad 8. The bad 8 is having an 8-drop in your aggressive 1-drop deck. The good 8 is having 8th card in your aggressive 1-drop deck. One of them is Obosh, the good one, and one of them is Bedlam Reveler, the bad one.
Yeah.
And yes, I know, but Bedlam Reveler only costs 2 mana. Yes, it does until it doesn't, basically.
Yeah. So I would love to see.
I think Obosh is the way to go with Prowess.
Can be.
Obosh is quite strong as a deck.
I would love to ask Franek here, Frakom 94, for those who don't know, like our red aggro friend. And Obosh looks very safe. It's a companion, and playing companions is cool. It's a companion with a reasonable restriction cost, but it's not as hard to achieve because you have things to cheat like Bonkasher Giant with Stomp.
What do you think about red-black Prowess? Or like red-black mid-range E deck? Because my problem with Mono Red is that
Pyro,
Mono Red does not kill Merktide very, very easily.
But you need to have something to kill Merktide that does not cost 2 mana. Like,
you know what's good on turn 2 of Ravgavan? Liliana of the Veil.
No, Zakas.
I think we'll get to that in a second, but I have high hopes for Liliana of the Veil, and I will tell you why in a second. But in a different way than you think. So
please
stop laughing and...
Okay. About Prowess and Obosh, I think this like we can return to times when like cheesing opponents with Blood Moon with like Prowess / Ragavan thing, that will be a thing. The question is how to kill Merktide when you are mono red. This can be a problem. So maybe this red black, maybe Murderous Cat sounds like a reasonable thing to do.
You can play red black, you can play red green, and play like each player sacrifices a creature with flying for 1 mana. You can play red white and play Path to Exile.
Oh, okay, red white Path to Exile sounds much better than Murderous Cat. Okay, so red white.
There are definitely ways to do that. Okay. So our last winner, or the group of winners, are cards that cost more than 2 mana and are permanents that couldn't be played with Lurrus. So First of all, my dear friend, right here, we've been through so much together.
But you know that the card will still be bad.
No, it will be very good. I
It
guarantee.
will be bad.
It will be very good. But I think, even though I love Jace very, very much, I think the biggest winner out of those cards are black cards that cost more than 2 mana. Because, for example, we never get to play with black mid-range decks with Grief. Like some people were, and we were laughing at them because they weren't playing Lurrus. But now you can't play Lurrus, and the Grief might be actually good in those decks. I'm not talking about some shit show Grief Ephemerate piles. I'm talking about like red black and stuff like that. So I think Grief might be good.
Greased?
Like Greased is really, really good card that you couldn't really play because of Lurrus as well. Well, back to Grief for a second. Like Unmask is not a fair card that you really play in those type of decks in general. But to be fair, we don't have the same Legacy analogy because black fair mid-range decks are not a thing in Legacy. So maybe Grief is good enough in Modern, but Liliana or Lilianas, both Last Hope and Liliana of the Veil, I think both of those will be very good sideboard cards in the format. I don't think you want to play. I'm not talking about like Jund with 4 main deck Lilianas, but I do think that Liliana was very good at doing a specific thing back in the day when Shadow was first popular, and it was a great card against low threat density creature decks like Shadow. If you play Liliana against a deck with like 12 creatures and you minus it, it's somewhat likely that they either have to spend another card to deal with it, or you will tick it up and you will kill something again, and at that point you won't lose the game. So I think that Liliana is a pretty great card to have against Murktide Regent, especially against this sort of like blue-black focus Murktide Regent deck with maybe Death Shadow, when you are fighting over Murktide Regent on their turn. For example, they have 4 mana, then they play Regent, you play Counterspell, they counterspell it back, and now they are tapped out, and you play Liliana, make them sacrifice, and the game is over very often. So I think that Liliana will be a very good, maybe not even sideboard, but like a situational card. When I'm drafting my blue-black decks right now, I just have 2 Lilianas in my sideboard most of the time, because I think it will be a strong card in this fashion. Also, it might be a strong, like, once again, situational but main deckable card in Ragavan decks. Turn to Liliana is very strong.
True. Like I remember Turn to Liliana from Deathlight Shaman.
Yeah, or like
times. It's really good.
It's really good. So I think Liliana gains a bunch of value. Liliana of the Veil. Also, Liliana the Last Hope is and always has been a really good sideboard card against small creatures. Like, if you are playing Hammer and your opponent has Liliana, you won't have that good of a time, I think.
I don't think so. Like, what are the cards that you want to kill? Like, you'll kill with the first ability Memnite and Esper Sentinel. And Esper, like, you will most likely get a card from Esper Sentinel when you are casting Liliana. And Memnite will be maybe not sided out, but, you know, it's just a 0-drop.
Okay. So how about that? You are playing a red-black deck with cards like Liliana the Last Hope. You play Fury, kill 2 of their creatures. Mm-hmm. Then you play Liliana the Last Hope, minus it, get back your Fury. Fury them again. And then you have Liliana on the table, and if they play a small creature, you will plus and minus, and kill their creature, and you will plus again. And then, after 2 pluses, guess what? You minus again and get Fury back again.
Okay. Combination with Fury sounds...
That will be pretty good, I think.
Yeah, okay, so... Okay, I was thinking about another possible winner, but I'm not sure, and I would like know I would like to hear your opinion. Blue-white control. Kahira, cards, Supreme Verdict, a lot of counters.
I think you will lose very badly to people playing Ragavan into Liliana of the Veil if you're playing blue-white.
Now, you feel that Liliana will be that played?
I think it will be at least tried at the beginning.
Okay.
Because people love Liliana. And I think
Okay,
if it's a good 4-off against something in the main deck, it's against blue-white with Ragavan. Maybe some people will even... Because something else that we haven't really got to play before because of Lurrus is like you are playing a Jund with 4 Ragavan and 4 Ignoble Hierarch, and you just want to play turn to Planeswalker, you want to play turn to Grease, you want to play turn to Liliana. Something that we didn't have before. And maybe now it's good. And you can even have Grief in the mix to play a discard spell right alongside it.
Then hope to return Grief. OMG.
Yeah, I think that blue-white will actually be quite shitty against those decks.
Against those decks, yes, but against like many others, I feel like...
I don't think you are winning against Murktide with blue-white. I think blue-white has been and will be a very exploitable deck in general, and you will lose to people with leaner decks if they're playing well, if they are smart players. Like if you have some good Murktide players, like our friend Alan or Gerardo94 or O Danielakos or any other player that I recognize from Modo who plays a lot of Murktide. If you are playing against such players, you will lose as a blue-white player most of the time because they will outmaneuver you, because their cards are better at outmaneuvering your cards because they're less clunky. They can time them better. And you are like, okay, so I have Supreme Verdict in my deck, so I will kill 2 Murktide Regents that my opponent has all the time. Because a person in your LGS that plays Murktide plays 2 Murktides on the table against a deck with Supreme Verdict. And if you are playing against somebody who has an actual knowledge of the matchup, they won't do that unless they know the coast is clear. And I think it's just you are not winning as a blue-white player against Murktide, I think. In general. I don't think that's happening. And just don't know.
Okay, the last card I want to point out is not on our list. Okay, there's one card on the list that needs to be pointed out. Seasoned Pyro.
Yeah, we already kind of mentioned it. But Seasoned Pyro is a really strong card.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what type of shell you want to...
you want to cast it on turn 2 off of Ragavan.
That's good.
And you probably want black cards.
7 to just draw 2 cards.
Yeah, you probably want black cards alongside it, I think.
So red black, mono.
I think red black will be good, like possibly with iteration.
Okay, that can be really good, but with red black with iteration can have some mana problems maybe.
Not really. Like you're just playing red black, standard red black mana base. You have like 8 fetch lands, and then you have a Watery Grave and Stevens or 3 total or something like that, or you have 9 fetch land, and then you are casting iteration fairly reliably, and you have treasures from Ragavan to cast it as well, so I think it will be fine. As long as you don't play like some obnoxious amount of swamps in your iteration deck, like I don't know, 4 swamps or 3 swamps, but you have like, I don't know, 2 swamps or 1 swamp, you're fine.
Okay, and the last card that is not on the list, and I think it can be like, it's not at least like, okay, it was checked, it was close enough to be in decks in Modern, but not good enough to be in a really good one. It's called Mayhem Devil, and I think the card is okay. Andrew of course will laugh at me, but
no, I think it's actually better than it looks.
Yeah, the power level of this card is absurd, and
let's make sure that all of our listeners, viewers, are aware of what the card does, because it's not that obvious. So it's from Throne of Eldraine, a set with well-known pedigree for broken cards at this point. It's 1 red and a black, so 3 mana for a 3/3 creature, the devil, I think. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent. I repeat, whenever a player sacrifices a permanent. So if your opponent sacrifices a fetch land, if your opponent is sacrificing Urza's Saga to its, because it has 3 chapters on it. whenever your opponent is sacrificing Mishra's Bubble or anything similar to that, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target, I want to say.
And a target.
So those triggers will stack up very quickly. So I do think that some sort of sacrifice decks with Oni, Cult Anvil, and with, well, once again, Ragavan ramps you. So maybe Ragavan. If not Ragavan, then either Gilded Goose or Ignoble Hierarch or some other way to jump ahead on mana. I think that might be a good shell to try out.
There was a Mardu Anvil deck that topated the challenge, and I really liked it, although the mana was horrible, like 9 sources for Esper Sentinel turn 1. So
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, my head was hurting when I saw the mana.
Yeah, like mana was kind of bad, so maybe the addition of white mana wasn't, that needed. But like you couldn't play Mayhem Devil there because Lurrus was so good. Now you can play Lurrus, so maybe it's worth to rethink if the deck can be built around Mayhem Devil, because with the cult ticking, you had a machine gun that will dominate a lot of board states. Plus, you have a lot of value, so you can outvalue, other decks. The only thing I'm a bit worried about is how it handles Murktide, because you don't have any flying creatures.
Liliana of the Veil.
Sorry?
Liliana of the Veil.
Maybe that.
You have a bunch of cards that you want to discard anyways. Like, I assume you are playing Cat and Oven, right?
Not that much. I think that if there were,
but most lists,
it.
I think, are playing it, right, or not?
Yeah, but but you want to play Urza Saga to find your Oven, and then your mana is kind of ambitious.
If you want to play red-black, then it's fine. You can play two colors with Urza Saga. That's
you should be able.
Not a lot of problems.
I have high hopes for this type of archetype.
Yeah, and if you're not Liliana of the Veil, then you can just play Terminate like a normal person.
Yeah, like Terminate or whatever to just get rid of Murktide. Outside Murktide, I feel like Mayhem Devil alone will create 2-3 triggers before it will be immediately killed by the opponent, and if it stays on the battlefield, it will be just insane.
Yeah, if you untap with Devil, you are not losing to a creature, really. Unless it's a really big one like Murktide.
Yeah. So maybe
it will be... And even if they have Murktide, if you untap, you might just kill Murktide with triggers on one turn.
That's true. But
and
if you are
I guess if you are killing... Yeah, if you are killing Murktide, you are probably killing your opponent instead.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially if you have 2 Devils or...
So, I will... Like in my free time, maybe try to find a good list.
I would also try to play Unearth alongside Devil. I think it's really good with Devil.
Yeah, it can be really good. Like 1 or 2 Unearths is looks kind of free.
And you can discard your Devil to your Liliana and then Unearth it. Liliana is getting better and better.
Yeah, of course. Okay, let's talk about Lurrus quite shortly.
Lurrus?
Losers of the...
Losers, okay. I've just heard Lurrus.
Maybe I talked bad. The first thing to mention is bad decks with Lurrus, so Burn, Mill.
Okay. So one second, I think it's important to discern, because I don't think that Burn players gives two fucks about Lurrus getting banned, honestly.
Of course.
Because you can play Exquisite Firecraft now. Finally.
Yeah, which is very
your beloved 15th sideboard slot that still I think 60% of Burn players were adamantly against Lurrus because of this coveted 15th sideboard slot.
Yeah,
I think it's more important for Mill and most important out of those 3 decks for red-black sacrifice decks.
Yeah.
Those are decks that actually wanted Lurrus, but now you can play Mayhem Devil as we mentioned. So I think that bad decks with Lurrus are not that much of a losers. Also because they were bad Lurrus decks for a reason, because they weren't utilizing Lurrus that well. So similarly to Hammer and Blue-Black, I think, lack of Lurrus in the format is net gain for them instead of net loss. So
true. Okay, another loser, and that's like that like for most of you maybe not intuitive, but like in our opinion it's quite maybe not obvious, but it's possible. It's Yorion piles, and like after Lurrus ban, like I saw many Twitter discussions that everyone would jump into Yorion
Not true.
and etc. etc. But in reality, like what were the Yorion piles good matchups? Lurrus decks, and Lurrus
Mostly
decks are
Lurrus
now
decks,
gone.
yes. There are, I think,
And
two main arguments for Yorion being down with Lurrus ban. And one argument against it being down. So let's start with the argument against. You now have companion and your opponent does not, most of the time.
which is
And
cool.
having 8 cards is still really good.
Yes.
And I think most of the complaints, even though people did not specifically said that, were about the fact that they didn't just ban companions as a mechanic. I think that's what people would like to see, and people were exaggerating either on purpose or subconsciously because Yorion is still a part of Modern. But aside from that, first of all, as Sodek said, Yorion had good matchups against most Lurrus decks, and Lurrus decks were suppressing bad Yorion matchups like combo decks, which is the metagame perspective. And there's also a card perspective, which is usually Lurrus wasn't that great of a card against Yorion decks. Sure, it was a 3/8 card, that's true. But once again, many decks with Lurrus would be much scarier for Yorion players if their turn 2 Ragavan or turn 1 Ragavan was allowing to play turn 2 Blood Moon or turn 2 Liliana of the Veil, or if your Lurrus control opponent had Thoughtseize into Jace the Mind Sculptor instead of Thoughtseize into Snapcaster Mage for iteration or whatever. Like, I think Yorion's weakness, or the 4-color weakness, is like a strong onboard permanent if you pave the way for it, and now you can play them more. You can just play those Jaces, Lilianas, Pyros, Blood Moons, whichever type of permanent you really want, and you can like cover it with enough disruption on all sides that it will stick and it will be quite problematic. So I don't think that Yorion is I definitely don't think that Yorion is like a deck that will dominate at this point. And I think I'd rather am leaning towards Yorion being a bit worse than it was before. Like 4-color precise specifically being worse than it was before. And 4-color is basically the only Yorion deck, so.
True. Don't underestimate 80 card Yorion defense access, because
I will.
Respect the cat is watching, maybe.
I will.
Maybe not.
I will not respect the cat, which is Arbiter, of course.
What?
I think that's the origin of the nickname, right? You have to respect the Leonin Arbiter. I think that's pretty obvious that the person is just a Defend Taxes player and they want you to respect the Leonin Arbiter. I think that's obvious.
That's true.
I will not respect the cat, and I will not respect 80 cards can't beat Ragavan Yorion decks like Defend Taxes. You'll still get Kolagans commanded on your Ether Vial or turn 2 via Ragavan because your deck is shitty. Nothing has changed. And Merfolk are still bad. Just remember that.
Why?
Merfolk are still bad. Just remember that.
Okay, how about elves?
Elves are still bad. Because Fury will be even more played, I think, than those before.
That's
and
true, actually.
If you don't agree with us, if you are a Merfolk diehard and you think that Merfolk are now the best deck in the format, leave the comment below telling us how wrong we are.
Yeah, Nikachu, if you are watching this, comments. Okay, moving forward, another losers, and it's like we already talked about it a bit, but I want to make sure that everyone listen to this. TSP Entrek. Is TSP Entrek Control a loser after Lurrus ban?
Grixis, yes. Other decks, no, probably, I would say. Okay. Grixis definitely would like to have Lurrus much more than it would like to have Jace the Mind Sculptor. Other decks, I don't know.
Whatever.
You are playing Esper, maybe. Another card that I think would be great in Esper just a few days ago was Kaya Orzhov Usurper in the sideboard.
Yeah.
Pretty good card against like the Shadow decks. You couldn't play it because
Hammer
of Lurrus.
too?
So, come again?
Against Hammer?
Against Hammer too. Like it's in a similar space to Hidetsugu Consumes All, I think, which was the card that people have been even trying. I've gotten so many questions last few days about the Grixis deck with Hidetsugu that F. Pavlush was playing. Like Grixis
Spike
with
also was playing
Hidetsugu.
it, yeah?
Come again?
Yeah, Spike also was playing it.
Spike took his deck list, and if Spike started playing something that is like literally next second, there are 10 people in my chat. Have you played this deck? Have you played this deck? What do you think about this? Thoughts about this deck? Will you play it? Will you play it? Is it good? Is it bad? And I was like, dude, you can play Lurrus in your deck. Like a card that's better than half of the power 9. And you want to play a shitty 3 mana enchantment from Kamigawa? No. But now Lurrus is gone, which takes a bunch of the appeal of the card a bit. But Hammer will still be good, so I think Hidetsugu Consumes All is definitely a better card now than it was 24 hours ago.
Okay, like I forgot to add to winners and losers the decks that I'm known for. Like I added Belcher. I'm thinking if Dredge is better or worse after this ban.
I think it's better.
It's like the first big thing is that Lurrus plus Nihil Spellbomb Loop won't be a thing, which is extremely cool. But other things. Also, the Metro versus Murktide is good.
More people will play
Metro
combo,
versus
which
Hammer
is
will be better.
kind of bad probably for Dredge.
Once again?
I think more people will play combo, which is kind of bad for Dredge.
Yeah, that's true. But also, I'm curious how many people will cut their one copy of sideboard Gravehate because there is no Lurrus. I don't think
Wonder
it will
how
be the
many.
case.
But have you wondered how many acolytes of TSP and Reg will start playing a bunch of Chaos Guides because they don't play Lurrus anymore?
That's not fun. Stop doing that. Okay, so Dredge.
Or Kaya Orzhov Usurper,
position.
which is also a card that's good against Dredge to some extent.
That's quite nice, but it can be overpowered at least. So maybe we should cut it and add to the winners bracket. But I feel that Dredge gains a bit from losing a bit of power, from the format. But I'm also a bit worried about how Erza Saga will dominate board states in near future. Let's hope that won't be a future for us. Okay. Another losers we have on the list is decks weak to Murktide Regent.
Obviously.
And we were thinking about what decks are weak to Murktide Regent, and we found Mill, mostly because it's a high CMC.
I still think that Blue White is bad against Murktide as a deck.
Okay, we also find out mono red or red green strategies.
Mono red prowess.
Red green trade winder.
Red green shitty cards, yeah.
Eldrazi-tron.
I think Amulet.
I feel Amulet can overpower it. It's not as bad as it could be. We'll see. I'm giving Amulet a chance here.
I think Burn, honestly. I think Burn is quite bad.
Burn is in a weak position because in a weird position because it should be bad versus top decks, Hammer and Murktide, but it's also good at punishing nonsense decks. So
that's true.
So I'm curious how it will look like. I expect to see a few Burn decks in a queue in
Yawgmoth is bad against Murktide, I think.
Okay, that's the big one. Yawgmoth is
they have Grease, so it's something, but
they have options, but the deck is really well tuned to deal with it. It's good at killing Yawgmoth and keeping the board kinda clear, and then your DRC and Murktide can just finish the job. So So I'm a bit worried about the Yavmon's future. Of course, the deck will survive and will still be, playable, more or less. But this can be a problematic one. Okay, another thing we have decks with the combos. So we were talking about Tron being kind of bad. Like if you want to play something like Red Green Valakut or Bring to Light something. I wouldn't be that high on that because there are few
Creativity is
faster
bad
decks.
against Merktide. Oh, another one.
Another one? Okay.
Because the removal spell is like
I
prismatic
have
ending
high
and March.
hopes for creativity with new triumphs. Maybe that will
That's
be
true.
something that will...
Triumphs are coming. Oh, and they are not called triumphs. Oh.
What?
They are not called triumphs like the cycle is... like they don't have... like we will call them triumphs, but they are not called something
Okay.
triumph, something triumph. They actually have their own names, which is what I prefer from those lands. Just like Shocklands, you have different name, unique name for every Shockland.
Mhm.
But it tilts me that half of the cycle is named something triumph and is unified, and half of the cycle is called by their own names, which is tilting.
I will never recover from that. Like
It's absolutely minor, and it doesn't make any gameplay difference whatsoever, but it tilts me. It just tilts me.
Okay.
And I will still call them Esper Triumph and Grixis Triumph.
Yeah, that's the only.
I know that the Grixis one is called Xander's Launch, and the Esper one is called Refine Tower. It's a name, so it's not like Refinery. It's like something close to that. Something Tower. And there is a garden.
The most important is that it gives you 3 colors of mana and enters the battlefield tapped. That's all I want to know.
The band one is called Spara something, and I know that because Canister posted the image of it and said Utkaj Szparę, which was quite funny.
Wow.
Which basically means shut the fuck up in Polish, more or less.
Utkaj Szparę. Okay, this was funny. Okay, the last losers of this change we have in the list is people putting too many expensive cards in their decks.
Yes.
This don't is play something that Diedrek added. So
don't play Bloodbraid Elf in your deck. Don't play like 10 permanents that cost like 3 or 4 mana now just because you can. Don't be an idiot, basically. That's what I want to say.
The lack of Lurrus means that you can add freely like 2 or 3 cards for 3 mana or more.
Yes.
Or maybe
I think that's one of the
important.
I think that's one of the best life lessons you can get from here. Don't be an idiot in general.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember I was watching some League of Legends coverage recently, and there was an up and coming caster that's starting their career, and there's this veteran caster, and they were talking before the show starts, and the best advice that the experienced caster gave to the new one was, "Don't suck." And I think that that's a pretty good one. Don't be an idiot, basically.
Yeah, that's like that's changed my life, probably. Okay, the last part of our very long talk about Lurrus and how the metagame will adapt to Lurrus ban is the metagaming. So like I already got a lot of questions about what do you think how metagame will adapt, what will happen, etc.
Yep.
The one big thing is that we don't know and no one knows.
Yeah, we can predict.
Yeah, we can
predict. At most.
But
we think that the 2 best decks, like 2 level 0 obvious best decks, are Merktide and Hammer. So they also had 4 color here, but I think after we talk it through, we are lower on 4 color than we were like 2 hours ago or something like that. So
yeah. I'm like, the more I think about 4 color after our conversation, the less I like it. And like, it will be a level 1 deck, not a level 0. I would not play 4 color right now because like the number of random nonsense in the metagame will be higher than expected, like higher than a week or 2 weeks ago. So I wouldn't be that high of playing for color. But after the metagame settles and after everyone knows what's going on, then tuning a for color deck will be a way to go, because raw power, card advantage, having a companion when others don't, etc., will be a good thing. So level 0, Mertide and Hammer. Level 1, Jędrek,
So they had decks that had bad matchup versus Shadow, and
will overperform.
yeah, well, that's level 1. I think the will overperform is kinda redundant, but whatever. That's not the point. Semantics are not the point here. I think that it's kinda true. I also think that Meritate is a deck that's a bit more exploitable than Shadow on a certain axis, which is Shadow plays discard and counter magic, and it's hard to exploit discard and counter magic at the same time. It's much easier to exploit just counter magic, like Meritate is playing. For example, by playing Cavern of Souls or something like that. Like if your plan is Meritate region protected with counterspell, if your opponent plays Cavern of Souls and something that's good against Meritate out of that Cavern of Souls, it's troublesome. I'm thinking something like Reflector Mage. Even though like actual humans are obviously bad against Ragavan as a card, but some sort of disruptive creature deck that's good against small creatures, but also has like bounce effects or something similar against Meritate in particular. Something like that. I don't know what it would be, but there is an angle, I think, here.
I would love to see something like goblins returning, because like historically goblins, like when I was talking to Mertide players, goblins had a fighting chance against Mertide because you had your own card advantage, you had removal spells, you had a combo finish,
I have a
etc.
shitty deck that might be good against Meritate.
Come on.
It's very bad. The deck is very bad, but it might be good against Meritate. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Mono White Heliod. That's the deck. You can play pro red creatures that blocks the ground creatures. You can play Cavern on God, and you play uncounterable Heliod. And then you have just 4 caverns in your deck. So you can Cavern on Heliod, you can Cavern on Ballista. And they can't do that much about it because...
I assume you are playing also Burenton to block Ragavan?
Yeah, you're playing Oriok Champion probably, or Sanctified, but Barenton is fair game as well. You can play Thalia, Guardian of Traben. This type of... Like, it was a deck for a second, like a year ago. You can play Skyclave as well. Like, I'm not saying this deck is good, but this is what I had in mind, more or less, this type of strategy when I said that maybe you can exploit all counter magic, no discard spells with Cavern of Souls, something like that. But ideally a bit better than Mono White Heliod, because Mono White Heliod, let's be real, probably not a very good deck, but I think the idea is what counts here, not this execution that I thought of in the last 5 minutes, because maybe somebody will spend 5 days or 5 hours instead of 5 minutes, and they will come to some actually good conclusion.
Okay, and level 2, and this is a surprise for all of you. We don't know, and we even won't try to guess what will be good in level 2.
We respect you too much to...
Yeah, right now, like we could of course try to click, but we broke the meta and we all would know everything, but this is
we didn't.
Not what Modern Solutions is for. It's for high quality content, not shitty content, and I think
level 2 is, for now, level 2 is not believing people who claim they broke the modern format after 24 hours. I think that's the real level 2.
Whoa, that's deep. I feel that like there are many strategies that can be good. Like as long as your deck has a plan versus the card Mertide Regent and to some extent Hammer, you should be good to go. And like still you can play against a bunch of nonsense.
Yes.
It can be problematic. But having a response to Mertide, in my opinion, will be the key
Definitely
in the next few weeks.
100% agree.
Just make sure that you have something. It can be removal. It can be like some
Killing
form
them
of tempo
beforehand.
spell, killing before, locking them out of casting it by relics, etc.
Yeah, maybe like less Lurrus means less red black means less Colagans command. Maybe Ensnaring Bridge is good again. Who knows?
Maybe this type of log that can be really good.
Like mono black smallpox with Liliana of the Veil and Ensnaring Bridge.
I really want Black Rack to be good, but I just can't believe the deck that like they play Ragavan, you play not a removal spell, they attack, steal your discard and discard your discard.
Yeah, if you don't kill Ragavan with this deck, you have to play like 10 kill spells for Ragavan probably or something like that.
And if you have that many kill spells, then your discard plan just not work. So
you can play Brutality, which is a shitty kill spell and a shitty discard, but it's both. Okay, so I think that's more or less everything we wanted to talk to you about. I have one little addition in the end. Like, we're in a pretty weird times now because Lurrus just got banned and Streets of New Capenna will come in 6 weeks, I think. And we know for sure that there will be triumphs in the set. And people have been just relentlessly asking me about those triumphs, which is understandable. So I think that triumph on its own does not make any given color combination playable. Like, if, for example, Esper or like right now, Mardu is not playable and it wasn't any more playable before Mardu Triumph. Or Esper Triumph won't make Esper playable by itself. It might be playable already, but we don't know. I'll try to find that out. And first of all, we have Triumphs, but the thing that I'm actually more excited for those color combinations, like Esper and Grixis, are powerful multicolor cards that are those multicolor sets have been known for. Like, I would really like finally to see a blue-black Terminate, for example. Just give me blue-black, destroy target creature. Like, the multicolor two mana card, just let me kill anything and not play with various Doomblade effects. I was playing blue-black before Lurrus got banned, and my sideboard was literally 4 different Doomblades to just pick the best one for the matchup. My sideboard was Murderous Cat, Doomblade, Go for the Throat, and Tyrant Scorn. Just 4 different Doomblades. And
I didn't know about Tyrant Scorn. Like I could tell the 3 others.
That's my favorite Doomblade. So, but yeah,
cool.
I think like it's weird because now we will take this month and a half to figure out what to do in this new modern, and then we will get new set with with Streets of New Capenna, and we'll have to figure it out most likely once again if the set proves to be somewhat powerful, which I think multicolor sets tend to have powerful cards for all their formats. So I think we will see some change. But yeah, exciting times to play in Modern, to experiment especially. So yep, that's all. We'll see you next week with some, I guess, early developments of the new Modern format. Don't go anywhere. Or I guess you can go wherever you want because we won't see you for a week. So don't listen to me all the time. You have your free will, just as I already said today. Don't be an idiot.
Okay. And don't forget to check Modern Solutions for the new guides. From my part, I can safely say that Dredge guide will be up in the very near future. I had to rewrite some things because of the rules ban, but it's most likely done.
Yeah, I wanted to put the blue-black guide this week or early next week, but Lurrus got banned. So I will probably just play different decks without Lurrus, blue-black based decks without Lurrus in the next few weeks. And then in the second half of March, I will put together an article about what I like about them, what was bad, and stuff like that. Like more of an overview of all of those decks than focusing on anything specific, unless I find a deck that I like very, very quickly. But even then, I probably will do something more general in March and then try and focus on one specific deck in April, because at the end of April we have an important tournament in Poland. We have Polish nationals that are open for everybody. They are happening in Krakow in week after Easter, so 22nd to 24th of April. So if you are interested in that, you can just...
If not...
We will have a link in the description
Europe?
for it. Why not?
What?
So you can, so you don't have to Google it yourself. We will have a link for it, and we will also have a link, as Sodek said, for our Patreon, because Patreon is our main form of content, and we really appreciate your support both on those videos and on Patreon. So yeah, that's it. We'll see you next week. Take care and bye-bye.
See ya.